Hello and welcome. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story, our digital platform that brings you the voices of the people that matter. On the program today, we continue to keep our intense focus on COVID. This is what the numbers look like at this point. We know that once again, the numbers are showing a highest ever daily spike. That 1 lakh figure now seems to get breached on almost a daily basis. But it's equally important, as the Prime Minister has asserted with chief ministers, that the recovery rate continues to be close to 93%. And those are also the number of people who have recovered. Meanwhile, vaccination remains critically important. And there is all sorts of rumors and scare around the vaccinations. And then, of course, there is a supply side problem as well. As you take a look at the statistics on your screen, today we will bring you the story of a hospital in the capital, Ganga Ram Hospital, where 37 doctors tested positive. There has been a great deal of concern because these doctors tested positive after receiving the vaccine. Now, the instinct among people who do not know science is to say that maybe the vaccines didn't work. But a very enlightening Twitter thread by one of the doctors at Ganga Ram Hospital, and let's introduce him and bring him on now. Dr. Sujay Shad, who's a surgeon at Ganga Ram, explained why, in fact, vaccines still save the lives of all of these doctors who have tested positive. Welcome to the program, Dr. Shad. A lot of people who read this headline, the 37 doctors have tested positive, their first response was to say, "Acha, iska matlab vaccine kaam nahi ki." You have been at great pains to explain that actually the vaccine has saved the lives of doctors at your hospital. So, thoda iske baare mein bataiye, sir.
You see, good evening. We've had a spike in Delhi. Let's not forget that. We have gone from a peak of 8,000 in December to a rising trend, and we are already hitting 7,500 per day at this time. So Delhi is literally on COVID fire at this time. There must be multiple reasons. But one of the potential problems could be that we are dealing with mutant strains already. We had some information that December had mutations, and that was the reason why we had such a large spike in December. But there is a possibility at this time that there are mutant strains of the virus which are presently causing this sudden rise in COVID numbers. Don't forget also that the entire city population's behavior was relaxed during the last 1.5 months. There have been marriage parties, there have been all sorts of get-togethers going on all over Delhi. So doctors as such, we are part of this society. We also have families, we have maids, we have servants, we have drivers, we go grocery shopping. We also go shopping for a variety of things, and some of us must have gone for restaurants as well. So that is one part of Delhi. Secondly, we have 37 doctors out of about 500 who have tested positive. Come to think of it, in a hospital which has been at the forefront of COVID treatment, we've been treating at least 100 patients per day for the last 13 months. And oftentimes we were running at 350 patients in the hospital at any given time. So this is a group of doctors perennially exposed to COVID patients, COVID positive or negative patients who are coming to the emergency and being decided later on whether they are COVID positive or negative. We are also the doctors who are looking at 1,000 to 1,500 patients in the outpatients per day. And those patients come with relatives, and no relatives are ever tested. So there is a lot of exposure happening within the hospital to the doctors. And if 37 of them got infected over a period of maybe 3 or 4 days, detected to be infected over a course of 3 to 4 days, we have to put this in perspective of the total number of 500 patients, 500 doctors.
So you're actually saying that you don't think that it's such a big number when put into the larger context?
Absolutely. And the exposure, look at the level of exposure that the doctors are suffering in the hospital.
The most important thing to talk about is that what's got a lot of attention is that the doctors who've tested positive, and please correct us if I'm wrong, had received both doses of the vaccine. Is that correct? That both doses, or were all of you jabbed both doses, right? Right.
both
Now,
doses and a couple of weeks thereafter. So we are expected to be at the time point in the vaccine history where we would be immune. But then don't forget that no vaccine has claimed that they will prevent infections.
yeah,
The claims are that the vaccine will reduce the severity of the illness to
yeah.
less than severe. And that is a universal thing. And we also know that people who get vaccinated, they do not carry as much viral load in their mucosal surfaces, and therefore they do not cause as much dissemination of the virus as non-vaccinated people would.
You know, it's so important what you're saying because so many people are looking at Gangaram and saying that iska matlab vaccine to kaam hi nahi karti. So if you had to explain in very simple terms to them that no, the vaccines actually saved the lives of doctors at Gangaram, and if they had not been vaccinated, what would have happened to these 37 doctors? Possibly.
Like it's difficult to say because this is still early days, and
Yes.
we need to be cautious when we are making forward projections. The natural history of infection is that you get infected and then you either clear it or you get sick. And if you get sick, you either clear it still or you perish because of that. So we are very early in the course of the disease, but having looked at the data from the 37 people who have got infected, only 5 required admission, and none of them required admission because of severe illness. Most of that was because there were comorbidities and there were difficulties in home isolation. So one gentleman was admitted because there were difficulties with home isolation. So he got admitted, but I think he's going to go out of the hospital in a matter of a day or so. So the 5 people who are admitted, none of them are very sick. And of the other 32, all of them are in home isolation and recovering. So vaccine, in a sense,
Yeah.
probably cuts down the intensity of the viral inflammation that your body suffers. Your body is better geared up to deal with the viral insult as and when you get it.
Now, the vaccine is supposed to prevent hospitalization and mortality, not the infection, but the severity of the disease, as you said.
Absolutely.
The 5 doctors out of the 37, I just want to reiterate this, the 5 doctors who have been hospitalized, you're saying this is not strictly because of the severity of the illness. It's because
It's
of
because
other,
of
it's,
severe comorbidities. So if you have half a dozen other illnesses, you're likely to
yeah.
suddenly deteriorate. And therefore, it is a good precaution to get the gentleman into the hospital.
Now, to those who will be skeptical, they will look at the story of Ganga Ram and they will say कि अगर इन doctors को भी COVID हो गया तो vaccine लगाने का क्या फायदा है? What would you say?
Okay. Uh, there are people who are hesitant for vaccination, and there are
Yeah.
people who are deliberately anti-vaxxers. So that is absolutely fine, so long as you maintain masking, so long as you maintain distancing, so long as you can keep the discipline up, you'll
Yeah.
still probably be fine. But the common sense approach is if we can get a large number of our population vaccinated, the
Yeah.
transmission of this disease would slow down and we will get a hold of the pandemic. For an individual, it is important to have your mask on. For an individual, it is important to get the vaccine. But for our population, it is very, very important that we do both.
Yeah. So even after you get the vaccine, you must keep wearing the mask.
Absolutely. And we are not losing it for another year at least.
Given that the vaccines are in short supply, how are doctors like yourselves coping?
Like we were given priority. The medical community, the healthcare workers were given priority. The
Of course,
police were
of
given
course.
priority. So the frontline workers that way were dealt with in a decent manner in our country. Now the limits that the government has drawn is based on the number of people above that age, and it
Yeah.
seems like a logical, sensible thing to do. Like we can have this noise that okay, youngsters are spreading the infection and maybe we should vaccinate them as well. Well, fine, if you can find more vaccine, vaccinate them by all means. But if you have to ration them, you're better off using it more judiciously.
Finally, would you encourage to anti-vaxxers and rumor mongers, how would you encourage them to get vaccinated if they are able to lay their hands on one?
Anti-vaxxers, not my cup of tea. Vaccine
I
hesitant
think,
people.
yes,
No.
not your cup of
Anti-vaxxers,
tea.
they're Looney Tunes. Like it's not mine. It's not my
I
friend.
agree.
But
I
people who
agree
are
with you.
hesitant, yeah,
Yes.
people who are hesitant, they need to look at evidence generated from large-scale studies. They need to
Yes.
listen to people like from ICMR and people like from CDC. Like listen to those people. You don't stop a car which is going next door and ask for advice. Why do you look for advice on social media?
Well said. Well said, and I
राह
think I
चलते
must
बंदा
thank
पकड़ के तो
you.
उसे समझ की बातें नहीं करते ना.
I must thank you for putting this into perspective क्योंकि पिछले 24 घंटों में ये पूरा headline चल रहा है that 37 doctors test positive after vaccine, and I think you've been able to explain that only 5 have been hospitalized and none of them are very sick, and mostly it's
And
been
all of them
because
are
of
well.
severe,
All of
and
them
all
are
of them are well.
And
We're glad to hear that. Thank you, Dr. Shad.
hopefully that's the way it will be. Thank you.
Thank you. Fingers crossed. God bless and thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalists.